It's going to be QG on the blue side, Ever on the red. To see now if anything really escalates or develops at all in these early stages.
One thing you might find surprising as a viewer is that we see our first Soraka laning competitive for quite a while. Misfortune Soraka. Misfortune's one of those champions next to Caitlyn, who has a lot of lane supremacy. She's a lane dominant champion, more so than Tristana. But you might think, okay, you're laning against Soraka. Maybe you're expecting a 2v2. Why do we see the exhaust on Alistar? Usually we'd expect Ignite in a Soraka lane, but with the Grievous Wounds changes, you don't actually get a reduction in Soraka's healing if you ignite the Misfortune. Okay, it reduces the summoner spell heal, but it's only reducing selfish healing, not Soraka's heals. And that's why the value of Ignite in Soraka lanes has definitely gone down.
Pings now, of course, is TCT is not really looking for anything. In fact, both of these two teams are forming that line of scrimmage straight down the middle of the map to win B as well. No one going for those deep wards.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable in the first game of the series that they'd be a little bit more conservative to try and not get anything really crazy early done. And QG has been a team that, you know, isn't necessarily afraid of that, but remember, this is the grand final here at IEM Cologne. There is a lot on the line. Yes, both these teams will be going to Katowice in the next year, but, you know, you always got to consider that prize money and the eternal glory. If Ever can win another tournament, this will be their first international win as well.
And that's a significant factor. And the thing we haven't mentioned, something that's been slept upon, is that, remember, we've talked a bit about the fact this is a semi-professional team. Crucially, they did not qualify for Champion Spring next year. There has actually never been an international win for a semi-professional team. The closest when it comes to lower-ranked teams is back at IEM Sao Paulo, 2013, I believe it was. Longzhou IEM won that tournament as a 5th to 8th seed in the LCK. But when it comes to a semi-pro team, it's uncharted territory.
Well, and the really crazy thing about it is, you know, even their opponents, the Jogo Reapers, have only been a professional team for one split of competitive play. Playing in the LSPL before that, and then eventually getting up to a high level of dominance in the LPL Summer 2015. But whoever wins this tournament, it will absolutely be massive.
Has been said as well that Ever and a lot of teams that are in the secondary or that semi-pro tier in Korea struggle very much finding sponsors and really establishing themselves as an org. So for them, a springboard into 2016, and it could all start here. It's Swift now going over for that Scuttle Crab. Athena would be trading back and forth here, and Papa, like he said, right now this matchup looks relatively even, but it gets worse and worse for that Victor.
It's always a sliding scale for Caston lanes. Rek'Sai's looking into bottom, considering his options.
Swift might go for something early here as well. He's going to get the Umbaro under a key as well. He does get locked up in that one. Make It Rain comes down, and the flash is forward for Key. He's trying to get the heck out. Looks like he'll just make it there. No more Prey Seeker from Swift as he does burrow down and head back.
A little bit of return damage fired down onto Swift. Ares was looking to come in for the counter engage, but it was over before he could get there. However, he and Loken will be very, very careful not to over-push this lane again, considering what just happened.
You want to put a lot of pressure onto the Soraka, you know, threaten the all-in if you're Alistar, but now with your flash down, have to be so much more conservative in your positioning. Swift's just being a nuisance. Wants to deny the quick pickup of the blue buff. Big factor, and what opens up Rek'Sai for these aggressive moves early. Okay, level 2, level 3 ganks are not that surprising, but the big factor is Rek'Sai doesn't actually want to clear his own blue because he can just pass it over to a laner. Doesn't need it for his jungle clear. So often you'll see these staggered blue timers as Ares, Swift, and both teams start to tangle around mid lane.
On multiple occasions, Swift has been forced to burrow away. He's finding himself, I mean, for other junglers, it would otherwise be a compromising position, but he's been happy enough just to be that nuisance, like you said. Wouldn't be having to deal with Ares as well, just coming into mid lane, a couple autos towards him, just to keep him honest.
And Athena's actually been able to catch back up and farm quite well in this game. And you know, at the very beginning, obviously, we always talk about Caston has a little bit of a rougher laning phase against someone who has a lot of wave clear like Victor. But Athena is definitely not going to have too much trouble now, as he's gotten not only a little help from Ares, he's been able to push in himself. And UMB will have to watch himself if he wants to try and take this lane down and get himself an advantage going into the mid game.
The solution for Caston's rough laning phase has traditionally been jungle pressure. You have to opt into an equal or greater jungle matchup if you are going to lane a Caston. And for example, the Elise, one of the strongest jungle pressure champions in the game, between herself and Rek'Sai. Bit of a line ball there. A bit of trading happens in bottom. Whenever the damage is on TNT, you know it's going to be healed up quickly, so it's not too much of a statistic, but that's the big thing about what Swift's doing. When Swift was contesting blue buff, that means that he has eyes on Ares. He has eyes on the Elise. That means that you can expect in the mid lane the flow-on effect to be Victor to chip damage with auto attacks, not have to be worried about Elise ganks. Honestly, it means the same thing in the top lane, just because if you know where Elise is, You can afford to overextend if you're Victor, and you can force to overextend if you're Rise, because if you know that the Elise isn't in the top side, you're not worried about the potential CC train that is Elise plus Java.
Right, and avoiding that early Elise pressure is also going to be very key for Jogo. And, you know, Swift will have a little bit more utility all game long. Yes, of course, Ares... Elise is still a very powerful champion throughout all stages of the game. It's why she's been such an important pick for such a while now. But still feel if you avoid this damage early on, you're in a much better shape coming out of the laning phase than you would be, of course, otherwise.
I mean, the big difference between the two is that the Tremor Sense is one of those things you can't itemize for. Having that permanent vision as Athena and take a bit of trade damage, trying to force the Castan out of lane.
You see this from Doomby all the time. And the moment he can, he lands down the Chaos Storm. Even if it's just to zone away his opponent, you can see he's built that CS lead back up again. Key is coming in, though, through the lane, looking for Doomby. Won't find him enough, though.
All right, TCT was there on the periphery as well, just to ward off any potential aggression. And Swift, honestly, he spent more time in Ever's jungle than his own, just constantly, like you said, not necessarily contesting things like blue, but keeping tabs on the movement of Ares and other Ever players in the jungle.
We mention it. Allowing Doinby to be more aggressive and relieving pressure from Rise just by focusing on his jungle matchup. It's a smart move from Swift, and it just means that the CS advantage is there for Crazy, because just the nature of Java means he has a lot of burst threat, but it's not as massive as it could be if Ares had the free time to show himself in the top lane.
When, though, is it that Crazy is going to start actually making plays outside of his lane? Because this laning phase could continue for quite a while unabated, and I think that favors QG here. When is Ever going to make a play?
Question about the late game. You know, you look at the champions here, Rise and Castan. It's a bit of a line ball between those two. Maybe Rise with a slight advantage, but Castan with so much potential with his Rift Walk. In the late game, honestly, comparing these two comps, you'd say that perhaps Jarvan falls off more than Victor if we're going to compare champions in the late game. Misfortune versus Tristana, you give the Tristana the advantage there. It's pretty even across the board.
Oh, Cataclysm being used there by Crazy to try and close the gap, but there's a very quick reaction from V, getting out with that flash, and no chance for Ares to actually make his presence felt. Athena also moving up towards his top side as well. They might want to link it.
I don't think they saw him on the backside, so Athena and Ares could actually go in, but they're just going to grab a little bit of vision in the blue side jungle of QG, and then head back towards the mid. Doinby is wandering in that direction, but he spots him with the pink ward.
The biggest overarching question mark is what does a damaged Jarvan do in the late game? Gamsu, actually another player at this tournament, played a lot of it for Dignitas. We saw a bit of it in the LPL as well. I believe it was Let Me playing it there, though I don't quite remember, and it can be super effective just because when you pile on damage, even Infinity Edge is a potential item you can pick up as 4 damage Jarvan. If you're swapping your life for Misfortunes, if you're swapping your life for Rises, that's a fair 1-for-1 trade when you have a Tristana and Castan backing you up. It's still a question mark though, just because you build damage, you're not that effectively tanky, you're melee and you're jumping right in between the Flag and Dragon, the ultimate. Those games so polarizing for the damage Jarvan.
But being able to be still a pertinent threat as that Jarvan towards a late game is important to neutralize the enemy. It's a Rune Prison for V, as obviously he is running a little bit low on mana, and there's the flash in response here. Both these top laners quite jumpy about making sure they don't get caught.
As a rough place to be Rune Prison, to be honest, right in front of a massive line of minions, and then tanking it for a few seconds, and really meant that he had no choice but to flash away in that situation. TCT will throw down a little bit of damage to start off the Dragon. Now to try and save his pink ward, he goes in, looks for Key. There is the Make It Rain, and they're going for it.
But they're going to be able to catch him as well. A lot of damage going towards Key. Doesn't yet have his unbreakable will, so he's having to scuttle his way out of that one. Taking a fair bit of damage, and you can see both bot lanes here as well, quite eager to follow each other on any sort of rotations towards mid or the jungle.
We saw Ever clear out a pink ward just there. Ironically, they had 4 on the map at one point. They have put down QG, that is, have had 4 at one point, just a couple of moments ago on the map. So they've really focused on permanent vision. This is a trend we expect with pink wards being so cheap. But it's good to see Jogo step up with the meta, whether it was champion select, and then just indeed playing to their win conditions over the course of this tournament. This is a team that looked a little bit out of their depth, especially against Dignitas game 1 of the entire IEM Cologne. But they've been stepping it up, and the results, they paint a picture.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the vision was just one aspect of it. You mentioned the champion selection. Everything QG has been improving at. I believe it was Frostgren that said it. They played to the level of their opponents, and Ever has been on another level. So far, we've seen them this tournament. Dignitas, of course, looked very tough for QG to face off against. But once they then faced off against Fnatic, it seemed like a completely different team. Yes, Fnatic made a slew of mistakes, but QG took advantage of them like a team that is much more experienced than they are.
Now, Swift knows there's a lot of pings towards the top side here because that Gromp has consistently been missing for Swift. He knows that Aries is spending time around that blue, and there are a lot of blue side pings as well towards the top of that river. So Aries was hoping to team up with Crazy there to maybe jump on V, but a little bit too canny for them there as Doing B getting himself a blue.
One of the strengths of Aries and kind of one of his weaknesses, one thing you can definitely point to is he's one of these junglers that's happy to sit in the brush just to create pressure for laners. He's done it consistently.
So Aries going to be going towards Swift here. It was an unburrow to get away, and even all the Crazy going forward is going to use that Cataclysm to try and lock up V, but maybe more damage coming back than he would have thought. Aries now going to get involved, and there's the unburrow, the first blood to V, and he just survives by the skin of his teeth.
Narrow escape there, but Crazy, he might not be done yet. He's got to run away as fast as he can, taking away from the red buff, goes in. That's going to be Doing B coming out of nowhere to pick him off.
The roam coming through from Doinby, very much on point. It's a champion is comfortable with, and that shows in his roam timing. Rise, his potential to 1v2. We usually talk about it in the late game, just with a Catalyst and a tier at the time. Turns around, chunks out two. An excellent jungle pathing from Swift means the first 2 kills onto QG.
I was about to say, this is one of the longest non-lane swaps we've seen in a game with QG. That has resulted in no first blood at 10 minutes, and it immediately changes. Turns right around. Excellent play from QG. They're the ones that immediately start off the action.
What's the consequence of this, though? Do we see any meaningful changes coming out of that fight there in the top lane?
I mean, Rise getting online earlier is always significant. The big factor to talk about is the target selection. Ironically, it was Swift who face check, took a lot of damage, then they changed target. It was Crazy who initiated the fight, just going in for the Cataclysm.
TCT trying to catch up Loken there as well. He does get rooted in place, but it was a good headbutt from Key to make sure TNT was out of that way. He's low on mana as well, but Loken taking a lot of damage and even Doing B being drawn towards the bottom side, but so is Aries.
You can see that Ever are not experienced at laning against Soraka. That's 2 times, one from Key, one from Loken, where the snare field coming out from the E is actually applied. They've just been staying too long in that ability. It's so easy to get away from if you have experience playing against it, but just trying to play at the limits of the ability is...
Ew, nice headbutt to knock him away from the bullet time, but that was a narrow miss for Loken. Aries he's here for backup, but they might just try to push on this as far as they can. Now that he shows face, they back away.
Still a healthy tower there as well, so QG maybe just wanting to back away. TNT hoping to get maybe a little bit of a cheeky snipe towards Loken. He was lingering on low health. He's able to survive that, and that duo will back up, and so will Aries.
I guess the big takeaway, as I was returning to my point about the top lane, is that the communication between Crazy and Aries is one of the cornerstones of their victory in the Kesper Cup. The fact that Aries was playing around this lane and then they gave up 2 kills, it affects the mindset, but it just puts behind the full damage job, and that, again, can have a very inconsistent impact in the late game. Still going to be able to cultivate a CS advantage, but it's not growing to the extent he might have hoped for in the top lane.
Jarvan's just not going to be able to do as much solo anyways. They really want to come together as a team, but this has always been QG's forte, is coming together and fighting together. But as we heard from their coach, that they think Ever is just as good at this, that, you know, they're practically perfect in every regard. I mean, that's a lot of respect coming out for this Korean squad.
Justifiably, QG coming with some more interesting things towards the champion select, however, don't get to play it exactly the way they wanted to, and it's TCT. A bit of housework done here as well. Does see Key off towards the side, and will harass him, so will be wards cleared.
Ever did end up with double teleport. Something we haven't talked about, but between the double teleport, it means that in the late game, the 1-3-1 will be a very real thing, but how will Crazy fare in an off lane against Rise? Or will it be Athena that's sent against Rise? It's stacking magic resist from Crazy. Of course, the magic damage shield comes through from the cast, so they have options. If you take double teleport, which has been consistently the trend from Ever, we have the statistic that they are 10-0, specifically Athena running mid lane teleport. They did it even on Varus earlier, we saw. In yesterday's series, it gives them so many options in the late game. They've offered a bit of a lead in the early game to QG. Only kills, because it might actually be the first dragon over to Ever.
Looks like that's going to be the case. So misfortune, TNT was trying to push them off of it, but nothing doing. Key will take a little bit of extra damage, but they do secure that first dragon. They're only down about 700 gold at this 14.5-minute mark. But more to your point about who's going to deal with this Rise, I think you got to send multiple people. The problem is, if he does want to split push, that means it draws a lot of attention away from other parts of the map, and QG can do a 4-1 quite easily.
Dina constantly trying to harass Doing B, even taking a tower hit there just to make sure that Victor couldn't recall as quickly as he would have liked, and as a result, Doing B is still in this lane and has looking worse. Well, he's looking worse for wear in terms of mana. He doesn't have that Catalyst protector, though. He's not going to have that extra sustain. He'd like to be able to leave when he can, and Athena just wants to exploit that as long as possible.
So just keeping the laning phase go. Athena has the flexibility to teleport, to stagger his backs, isn't as predictable in his roaming as Doinby is. The pressure around mid has been the consistent story of this game, and despite the fact that for much of the early game, Swift had the pressure supremacy, specifically invading and getting eyes onto Eris, Athena has actually cultivated a CS advantage in the mid lane, in a Caston lane, which any player knows, whatever the matchup, offering Caston a CS advantage, the fact that he's taken a combat summoner, Doinby, and Athena has the teleport, bodes poorly as we scale on for QG.
It certainly does, and Doinby has not had a whole lot of help from his team either, since there has been a little bit of early gank pressure that was focused on Ever's side towards that middle. Yes, it didn't result in a kill, but, you know, Doinby has had to do it on his own. If he wants to go up top and give a little bit extra for himself, that was his prerogative, and that's how he secured that kill, but nothing so much in the lane.
To note as well that ESC are proceeding with 3 of those yellow warding trinkets here as well, not really, you know, falling in with the League of Blue trinkets adage at this stage.
I mean, it's just a timer thing. It might be due to back timers. I haven't watched Loken and Eris closely, but we're expecting 4 blue trinkets, 1 red, given that we're on 523. There's some more ideas available in 524. We see a slight nerf towards the blue trinket. You can see already starting on the side of QG to get more of those blue trinkets. I just think the power of that particular trinket on patch 523 means that once the back timers come in, once it hits the 25-minute mark, it's going to be much more predictable, closer to the 4-1 or maybe the 3-2 when it comes to blue to red trinkets.
I mean, we've been talking a lot about the early game here as well. We're starting to hit towards that 17-minute mark here. Nothing but 2 kills over towards QG and the 1 drag into Ever. So where do you guys really see this peace and quiet breaking down?
That's a great point. I mean, we haven't seen any towers this late in the start of the game, and that is a little bit, I think, troubling for a team like Ever, who maybe needs to make the first point, but we'll look as Loken is looking for TNT, jumps for the flash, though.
Yeah, rocket jump forward and TNT there. The moment that TCT wasn't there, and of course, he and Key have both been going up towards that red side of QG's jungle and dealing with wards, so an opening there that ESC weren't quite able to take advantage of.
It's a bit of a surreal game, given that we've seen multiple games with, say, 4 or 5 turrets down by the 15-minute mark. Turret trades definitely not happy in this game, despite the Tristana. But given, of course, was really focusing on the turret execution with the Tristana rather than just powering down the laning phase. Double teleport means that once we see a fight, things will change depending on how many of those global summoners are used. But what's actually going to force that first teleport? Speaking of...
Right towards the top lane here as well. Is this Athena actually not really wanting to do too much? He may be crazy, feeling as he's being shoved in slightly, maybe premature, but see Doinby as well, trying to match his motion up towards the top side. Perhaps a return towards a mid is in order.
And that's exactly what's happening. The teams are attempting to mirror each other, and as a result, there hasn't been much action and counteraction. The 2 kills notwithstanding, as Athena looks for Doinby, trades back and forth, but there really just isn't a lot of push pressure either way. And until one of these 2 teams starts grouping more than 2 or 3 members, it's not going to change.
And we have Key and Loken actually making a move towards the mid now as well. Perhaps satisfied that, no, it's Key just going back to do, and again, put down a pink ward, clear that one out. It's going to cause TCT to have to come up as well, as we see on our screen here. So, again, teams being brought head-to-head, neither really wanting to go for that big fight. The respect between these 2 is palpable.
Yeah, it's just the stage, you know. It is a best of 5, something we didn't really mention. So it's going to be a long series, it's going to develop from here. Maybe we'll see more of the trademark flexing from Ever when it comes to their champion select. Not to say that there's anything they've done particularly wrong here. It was just not at the same level of mystery as we saw in the previous series as yesterday.
Well, you know, Papa Smithy, no one expects the banana, and Ever definitely least of all this time. However, they were the ones pulling out some trickery yesterday against H2K with that Vayne pickup at the very end. I think that surprised a lot of people.
Just the value of the Soraka still remains to be considered. You saw in a moment where Misfortune had to flash and lane TNT, instantly healed up. That's the power of the Soraka. But Soraka in a team fight where you have the likes of Crazy on the job, and the Elise, Cassidon, all these champs, even Alistair can all get in and get in the face of Soraka and either zone her out of a fight or instant kill her. She's, of course, a very brittle champion who's just trying to skirt around the backline, utilizing her passive and the immediate and massive mobility that gives her in terms of movement speed. What Soraka shows outside a laning phase, basically Soraka's designed to guarantee you a laning phase victory, specifically combined with a lane dominant champion like Misfortune. 23 CS for a champion that in the late game can be super powerful or can just be singled out by the assassins on Ever, specifically with double teleport leading to a flank. I'm going to expect that Ever will have a high kill priority on the Soraka first and then deal with the other members of Jogo.
You see, before we even get to that point now, both these teams, you see there's a tendency to use those summoners very, very quickly. They're not really holding them back if they feel like there's even a remote chance that they could go down or be threatened straight on that F or D key and getting the heck out of dodge.
Absolutely. I mean, the reaction time for both these teams is quite excellent, but they just have absolutely no hesitation. And it's one of the differences that you see generally between Western and Eastern teams is sometimes Western teams will, and lumping NA and EU a little bit together here, hold back a summoner if they think they can escape, and it doesn't always work out that way. These two teams, definitely not the case.
I think we can all sit back. I think we can all relax. If you don't know that, by 20 minutes only showing 2 kills and no structure kills, it's been a very, very quiet early game. And that's still my question is, what will prompt that first fight? Teams are posturing around Dragon, but we still haven't seen anywhere near a full committal to an objective 20 minutes into a game. It's just ludicrous to think of, given the context of this tournament.
And QG as well. I mean, these are guys that love to fight all the time, and every time we haven't seen a lane swap, they've been very quick to try and take the kills, and they haven't grouped up for it. I think they might be worried about the potential of losing a member quickly with this, frankly, assassination composition from Ever.
And this has almost become a current trend as well, that skirmishing around these objectives, even ones such as wards, is more common than people going in and trying to get the fight as well. It's make sure you can counter their wards with your own, being there, maybe throw in, a cheeky auto attack or a Q or something. But that full committal, it seems like teams are far more reluctant to actually make those here. The ambient gold, of course, being increased as well, and people hitting those spikes a bit earlier on. Maybe some more chaos in the mix, in the background at least.
The only small window we get in terms of how these teams expect to play out, say, the mid to late game, is that Athena's gone for Sheen second. He's looking like he's going to go for the Lich Bane. That's more of a split pushing build, looking to exploit the teleport that he's picked up, rather than say the Zonias try and dive in, throw out a burst of damage, and then decrease aggro from the likes of a Rise Snare. So it looks like split push will be in order. QG, they interrupt the Dragon, they pick it up, but first Dragon, not a big consideration.
One thing we did see yesterday against H2K is that Ever were actually happy to go for those dragons and apply that. And like you said, Papa, it was very much a sleeping, slumbering lion. But they were going for that dragon. They had actually 4 dragons to none at one point here as well. So if there's any way that they can gather even pressure in a small way, it looks like they're going to try and do it. But QG managed to push them off.
Yeah, just bringing more members to the party, and Ares wasn't able to do a whole lot more on his own. And you can see in the Vision game, too, that both these teams have been prioritizing up and down the river, but not going too far to their jungle, as Loken takes a lot of damage, trades back to TNT, but there's the heal, and it's all for naught.
Triumphant Roar not really giving as much heal, of course, as that. But here comes Swift in towards the bottom lane. It's a decent little knock up there. He did get headbutted back, and there's a ball time cutting across. Another knock up there. Key, though, he's surrounded by 3. Everyone's going to get involved in this one as the teleport comes down on that bottom turret. But it looks like it'll be all for naught. ESC have managed to stave off this aggression, but Doonby might be caught out here. Yes, he's going to get jumped on. It wasn't quite a cocoon there, but he blows him up in a matter of seconds. The Cataclysm comes down, and Crazy is in the middle.
He absolutely is crazy that time. A double kill over to Doonby. QG come up with so much more, and Swift, it looked like he didn't even notice Loken for a second, turns back around, he can grab the blue buff. This is a big swing for QG.
The burst damage coming onto Ares was insane. This is a Rune Glaive, at least, not like the Cinderhawk at least we saw yesterday, and instantly died to the burst from just a couple of hex score upgrades and the Rylai's. Massive damage means that finally, with all those teleports channeled, with that action, we are going to see some structures roll down. It's the first 2 of the game, and suddenly out of nowhere, a 4,000 gold lead cultivated by Chao Gu.
4 kills to 0, and Swift just bails the heck out of dodge, goes for the farm back in his own side of the jungle, and QG Reapers up on the board ahead of Ever in the start of this best of 5 series.
And you have to say 0 for 2 on the aggressive players from the melee range assassin. You'd have to say pseudo assassin in Jarvan. Usually you wouldn't think of Jarvan as assassin, specifically out of the jungle, but when your item build is Ghostblade, Hex Drinker, and a Tiamat, you're only looking for one thing. It's damage, and so far it's counted for naught.
Yeah, and not only that, Ares has gone with this damage build. You mentioned the Rune Glaive, and because of that, Ever doesn't really have anything resembling a true tank.
Hey,
the closest they've got to the Alistar, but that is only really tanky when he throws down his ultimate.
He's got 6 seconds of tankiness. Come on
yeah,
now.
but that's not going to last the way QG plays these fights, Papa Smithy.
Fair point.
Of course, his Keystone Mastery as well will be reducing that damage as well by 6% if he's close to his lane partner. It's very common, of course, for that Alistar to be taking at this stage in the game. So, it's 4-0 here in gold. Yeah, it is creeping up. It's 3k the difference here for QG, and they do have 2 turrets to none. So even after a very placid, tentative earlier game, we might start to see things open up a little bit more.
Really smart use of the blue trinket coming through from Rise. Spotted out the 2 members in top, looking to try and pick a kill on Rise. We're moving away significantly from the part where Rise is that easy champion you can clip off. They tried it earlier, fed over the first 2 kills of the game, and now Seraph's Embrace and a 10-stack Rod of Ages. Not going to be any assassinations on the Rise anytime soon.
No, and the real big issue here, as QG are going to start a very aggressive Baron.
Doesn't have teleport.
Oh boy. Not to worry. There's the Chaos Storm onto Ares. He might just go down, and this one he's burning away just a little. Spiderlings are taking it up. That's just a distraction, though. Crazy's got to do something now.
That's right, this could be very, very messy. Ares are being so low, they've neutralized that jungle threat. He's caught it in the gravity field. Key goes in, Key goes out as quick as he went in. 2 kills down, and the Baron for QG. And very, very clean and impressive stuff from them so far.
They pulled the trigger.
Exactly, they pulled the trigger decisively. This hasn't been something we've seen with any consistency. We've seen it once maybe in the tournament from Jogo, but they pulled the trigger. Athena caught with his pants down in bot lane. You might have a lot of mobility on Cassidy, but his teleport was 5 to 10 seconds away, and just a 5 to 10 second gap has changed completely the texture of this game.
You talked about sleeping lions earlier on, Uber, and I mean, this is really the way it went. Ever was caught sleeping for quite a long time this game. You know, I think a lot of people were snoozing on it, and then QG just said, hit the alarm button. We are going in, boys. They get themselves a Baron. They get themselves 2 more kills. So far, they're looking for a perfect game.
And now the poke wave clear from the likes of the Cassidy, from the Q from Jarvan is going to count for nothing. Whenever you have a cast in the mid lane, you look desperately for the likes of Sivir in past metas or other champions with instant wave clear. And right now, if they group and push, barring some sort of miracle flank engage from the like of Crazy, it's going to be watching turrets fall 1 by 1 forever.
So needless to say, a massive power play has now been opened up for QG, and we talked about critical mass. You build up to that critical mass, and all of a sudden, it's an absolute meltdown. 6 kills to none, and of course, about 7k for QG. Baron buff on them as well to see where they want to try and take it, but right now, they're just going to punch down that mid.
Yeah, that's just what they do best. QG, when they group up, they are a force to be reckoned with. With the Baron buff, it makes it even harder for even a Tristana to clear these waves away. They can start pushing deep in the jungle if they want to get some vision, but remember, they're still 3 turrets to 0 here. Ever have not managed to knock down a single structure this game. QG are going for, once again, a perfect game to open this series up.
This is a Tristana that hasn't managed to find a turret kill. It's because Tristana's been anchored in bot lane. Loken has spent basically the entire game 2v2 farming. They haven't been rotating around like we saw H2K employ Forgiven for, where they give up, say, dragon pressure just to pick up early turrets. The lack of a turret game has meant that the gold lead, there's a lot of static gold on the map, and it's all been in the coffers of QG, whereas Ever are falling further and further behind. It's 7,000 gold now.
It's going to be more as well by the time this Baron buff is done. You can see this pressure towards his middle in a turret. And ESC have to give so much space here to QG because of the threat that they have generated.
They can't even return fire. And, you know, you can see this, the cheeky protecting the cannon minion strategy. But Crazy, they know he's on the backside. They know he can come in with the Cataclysm. But no one from Ever wants to commit. They put the fear into this team. And now the semi-professional Korean squad loses another tower. We're 28 minutes into the game. They're pushing on the Nexus turret, guys.
Their comp doesn't have any answer for this sort of pressure unless they expect Crazy to actually be able to pull off and engage. But 2 out of 2 times that he's gone in aggressively with his combo, he has been popped along with one of his allies. So for now, they're just watching their turrets fall down.
Crazy knows the second he goes in, he's going to get eviscerated. Doinb is going to just sarcastically turn his head and let the combo go.
Even TNT feels like he can step up to the plate here. You can see those double ups just starting to hurt. The crits really going. As much as Escape Ever trying to clear the waves, they just can't get it in time. And there's so much damage on the side of QG.
Baron buff is definitely proving to be problematic. And look at this, they're getting this for free. Ever, at least they know they can't fight for this stuff till the game's over, but you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Look, they're sacrificing any hope of controlling the mid game here, hoping that QG is not decisive enough to pull the trigger on finding other standing gold, for example, other outer turrets. They tried that once. They bluffed bottom lane. You saw Athena specifically be the big culprit there. Went bot lane. They thought, okay, QG's not going to go for the Baron. That's not in their blood. Instantly took down the Baron, and now they're rotating off. for another easy dragon.
Yeah, but Ever's not far behind. It's a sea of pings as they look to try and make something happen and stop the bleeding here. Athena goes in. Dragon's already down, but ESC looking for more.
The flag and drag missed, but Crazy 2 are caught in the bullet time. Crazy will fall down as well. Not before Loken did. Doing B now being caught, and you can see that V did drop. Key has been caught, but a triple kill coming up for TNT. He's going crazy. He's definitely woken up, and Athena can only shake his head in dismay as his team falls to the ground.
The target selection was good. They looked at Soraka, but they ignored the full channel bullet time and coming through from Misfortune. It's only Athena alive. 29 minutes in the death timers. They're pretty respectable on the preseason patch, and this might be it.
They're definitely posturing towards these turrets here as well. TNT takes a bit of damage, but you can see what QG want to do here.
I was talking about Nexus turrets earlier incorrectly, but now they really are pushing for it. Still only Athena up, but the death timers are starting to get a little shorter, and QG aren't going to push their luck just yet, but they do look towards the top side where they have built a solid-sized minion wave.
They're able to back away now with so much gold in the pocket. 4,000 to 7,000 now. 10,000 gold is the advantage. And the flanks from Jarvan, they're just not worth respecting. The misfires from the first two just condemn Jarvan to be almost an afterthought. Okay, if he can somehow pile together 6 items, maybe he'll be relevant. Athena's really fishing for a pick, but there's no backup at all.
Absolutely none. No follow-up as well. You can't rely on Crazy as well. We are seeing that, you know, sometimes you see these fed Jarvans and you think, I'd love to be him right now, or the things that we can do, but here's the replay of that fight.
We're going to watch the replay. It's good controlling of space. Now watch the target selection. They realize, okay, everyone's going to get around in the back. They notice Soraka and think, okay, we'll take it down, but TNT's ult completely kills Ares and the easy double kill. From there, Doinby's just poking around with the Rylai's, keeping the slows. Key's ult runs out, and it's just easy cleanup for the Misfortune.
And the Jarvan ult was even a net negative in that situation. He stuck himself there for a little bit too long and couldn't do much as he was CC'd down and silenced. And ESC Ever, they played so well yesterday, and they made such great decisions. You could argue their pick ban seemed a little bit stronger than QG's just in general, but, well, a lot stronger in general, but stronger this game. But we're seeing QG play an incredibly controlled game, something we hadn't seen from them prior to this tournament, something that we see them evolve into. And against a team that's constantly changing, how can Ever adapt?
The big question. The only surprise to me in the draft phase was when it came to the last pick job, and I can understand the thought behind it, but Crazy is a wonderful Olaf player. He showed it specifically in the Kesper Cup. It felt to me like Olaf was the more reliable version. Now you've committed to full damage. The downside to that you can see very much on display. Full damage can fall off if you don't have the extra gold income of a snowball, and the turrets just keep rolling over for QG.
It's going to be 7-0 if they manage to take this inhibitor turret right now. Even without Baron buff, QG confident enough coming forward in this Cavalier manner as well, spreading plenty of extra damage, and that turret went down to minions, so QG do eventually lose one, but you can see they're more focused on this. It's a 10k gold lead at 32 minutes, and they want this one badly.
Just keep on pushing all they want. Ever did clear the wave away, but it's just a matter of time at this point before it goes down. We're 32 minutes on the clock, and we know that this is about as late as some of these ones have been going, with few exceptions. QG looking to close out game number 1 and put the ball back in Ever's court to try and catch up.
Misfortune's a champion who we talked about as a lane bully, about an early game champion in general, just because in the late game, tanks can kind of wade through the bullet time, feel a bit annoyed, but mostly get through it. But that's the key word, tanks. There are no tanks on the side of Ever. We saw Runeglaive Elise and full damage Jarvan both got nuked down by the bullet time. You look at that bullet time and sometimes it makes you a bit excited. I know I look at the damage numbers and it says, okay, if someone for some reason doesn't get out of this, 5,500 potential damage with 3 AD items. That's coming closer and closer to reality here. Multiple members can be nuked down by bullet time from TNT now that he's level 16.
I feel like they completely discarded this Misfortune pick, to be honest. There were so many things that could deal with it available in the pick and ban. Trundle was up. Shen was up if you want to wade through and maybe
Olaf, as I mentioned.
Olaf was available. Even Braum would have been a much better choice, I feel, than the Alistar. But they, blinded the way.
Interrupt capacity for Ever to deal with that Misfortune is definitely not as present as they would have liked. And at least QG, you can see them now. They've taken their foot off the gas, of course. The Baron is yet again available, and Swift definitely is thinking about setting things up here as well, trying to get some wards placed down and taking control. Elixir of Iron for him as well, so you know exactly what he's trying to achieve with that one. City might be caught here as well. He's got to be careful. Athena will be able to jump on him, but Swift Never too far away to assist, but Crazy wants a bit to flash out straight away. The flag and drag comes through. TCT, he somehow just goes down, but it took a lot of damage to do it. And now, damage being traded out on towards the side. It's Loken forcing to flash over.
Even the best situation for Ever just didn't happen to have enough. B will finally get shut down, but a full channel of bullet time again. TNT picks up even more. It's a 3-for-2 trade, and now they've got to back off again.
And no one can do anything compared to this Rise. Rise runs freely. Everyone cowers in fear. Once again, the Misfortune ultimate. Deft-esque in using terrain to ensure no one could interrupt it over that cove towards the red buff. Now they're going to turn on to Baron. There's no hope. Only Alistair's even in the area. And it should be a second Baron pretty comfortably over to Jogo.
30-second death timers for Crazy and for Athene here, and QG, they have not stopped since, of course, we hit that critical mass. It's their second Baron for the game. They're only missing Dawnby here, and it might back off for one, I'd say, last push by the looks of things.
11.5K in the bank ahead of Ever. The Xiaogu Reapers are looking to close us out in style now. They can push out the side waves, take their time. They've still got plenty of Baron buffs since they only just secured it. Waves pushing in their favor across the map. And not even all of Ever's even up yet. In goes Loken, though.
Swift now going to try and get to grips with him as well. Tough situation for a Rexar to deal with. Be annoying to have him go down so early, but I think he will be caught. He tries to flash, but Loken reads it well, and that's the 4th kill for ESC coming up there as well. Swift off the board.
And look, Swift is prone to the brain fades, but crucially, this is much later in the game. It might only be an asterisk on what has been an almost flawless performance by Xiaogu. An answering Dragon, it's 2-2, so of course the Dragon, 5th Dragon win condition well out the door, whether it was 5-23 or 5-21. And it's just going to be a bit more farming. It buys them a little bit of time, but it definitely doesn't seesaw any of the momentum that Xiaogu has cultivated in the first 35 minutes.
Absolutely none. The only thing they were able to push back was the bottom lane wave a little bit, courtesy of Athena, but that can be dealt with. At this point, even as Caston, I'd be worried to go up against TNT solo. And the rest of the team are just trying to stem the bleeding here. They have an open inhibitor in the middle, and all Xiaogu needs to do is group up, and that's what they're doing best.
Just so many questions to ask towards Ever. This team that was so on top of the meta at the Kesper Cup, that was so on top of the meta as recently as yesterday, the last series that we were able to cast Uber. And you just look at this team and you think, okay, from the Alistair first pick, where you're like, that's not a flex champion, that's weird, Trundle's up, but they're annoying. You're like, okay, Alistair's strong, I could sort of follow through there. And then we saw the previous fight where V teleports in. Athena and Crazy didn't use their teleport in the last fight. They were down 2 summoners. For whatever reason, they looked for a brute force fight and paid for it. Now they're actually cultivating a spot for the teleport, but whether it was stylistically or in champ select, it's going to need a big rebounding from Ever as we move into game 2.
In the siege now, he's going to be underway yet again. Key already getting chunked out of half health, might I just add as well. Face the mountain shield for a bit of Athena. Oh, just escapes that last overload. He's going to be okay, but he can't say the same, of course, for that inhibitor turret. It's QG again, inexorably pushing forward. Doing B things, of course. Having to play down that combo whenever he can. Won't quite kill Key, but will cripple him critically.
No one dead on the side of Ever, but they carved out a big flank off the side of Key's backside, take themselves another inhibitor, 2 down in the base. They can just keep clearing these waves and try back again. 37.5 minutes on the clock, and a controlled, comfortable, and clean lead for QG.
And at the end of the day, we always try to give these teams the benefit of the doubt. Honestly, Ever certainly have a lot of benefit left in the tank to tip the scales, given how on top of the meta they've been recently. There's just questions I have. For example, Athena committing to the Lich Bane early, not going for the Abyssal Scepter, which is one of the most cost-effective AP items left on this patch. He went for the split push build. The moment this push exited as a potential option, in fact, the split push hasn't really been talked about. He's committing to it now, but when you're talking about an 11 to 12,000 gold lead, it's not much of a factor. But they've just gone for these slight stylistic choices. They haven't used their globals anywhere near as well. We mentioned the statistic 10-0 on teleport mid laners. And this one has been a flubbing when it comes to teleport play consistently forever.
Looks like that record will be smashed, in fact, Papa Smithy. And, you know, at this point in the game, when it looks like you've lost it, if you can maybe get a wipe, you can turn it around. But this is not exactly what Ever's comp is going to be built for. They need to spend this time looking at what happened, what went wrong, how they can fix it for next time, and revise some of those questionable decisions. Because we did see yesterday they were able to turn around what didn't look like the optimal start.
I mean, Ever let things happen. They let the draft kind of get away from them. They just didn't have the same stranglehold they did in yesterday's series. They let the early game get away from them. A team that's been so aggressive with lane swaps, so aggressive with taking down turrets. There were no turrets taken in the early game whatsoever. It was just passive farming from Loken and Key. So it just felt like they let Xiaogu play at a slow pace in the early game, and how much does that suit a team where the early game, that's their biggest headache. When they get to late game, they're actually pretty competitive. Jogo were winning the early game, and it's no surprise that when we get to the late game, with the lead that they've cultivated, or at least able to passively put together, they're doing just damn fine.
This is a team that was built around TNT originally. At its formation, it was Linko's desire to build a strong core around TNT, and you can see that's almost been personified in this particular game now. It's a QG coming forward aggressively, maybe looking for something there, but it is TNT 6-0-2 right now as well. The flash forward for V. Well, actually, not quite catch on towards Loken there as he can return some damage. A flag will drag from Crazy, gets him in. V is blown up, but there's a bullet time. A lot of damage coming across the face. Athena goes down now as well. Ares, Chaos Storm, he gets knocked up. He repels away from most of the damage when Key takes the brunt, but there's Ares trying to back away. Crazy goes for the backline, but Swift, he's swinging left, right, and center. Haymakers coming out from that man. Crazy, should I say, is going to drop.
That's just the goal disadvantage. They can't do a thing even when they manage to pick up a pick. Last inhibitor's gonna fall. This game could be over in a matter of seconds, and Loken bails out, just barely escaping, and Key, he's not gonna be so lucky. TNT, the godlike kill.
As Ares now will fall as well. It's a matter of time. He's going to repel out of danger if he can, but they look towards Loken as well. Emma pouring out of the fountain just to be taken down straight after. He survives, but that Nexus is going to be looked at now. QG are going to work that one down, and game one will go over to the Jogo Reapers.
Jogo picking up this win is a surprise to many watching you fall from the fan vote. They were big underdogs, but they were